lead us in a prayer call. Give us a prayer call here. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Toda, Toda, we bow for this day. Toda, for allowing us to make it through a fast day, giving us strength in our bodies as we dwell in, as we commune in the Spirit and the Ruach, as we go through this fast day, praying for those who are sick and afflicted, praying for those who are going through troubles and tests and trials, praying for those who are in sorrow and weeping, praying for those who are young and those who are old. We pray, hallelujah, for those who have made it through the fast. We pray that we have done a soul search, reflected down on the inside, looking at our hearts and our minds and all of our life, from our uprisings to our downfalls. Hallelujah, 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 amen, amen. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. All right, everybody that's fasted on today, and not only were we fasting, but we were praying. You can't fast without praying. And also during your fast should have been some study time, looking into the word and reading of the scriptures and what's really important about this time and this fast that we went through is the fact that we're about to keep a feast that was commanded for us to keep. And after the Mashiach was our sacrifice and our Passover, everyone is to do an examination of themselves. And so today was a good day to turn your plates aside, really get into prayer and self-examination. He tells us that in 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter. Let a man first examine himself. So nobody from those who are listening in, those who are in the house, nobody can say that, well, we weren't even taught, we didn't even know, because you're going to come down to Judgment Day. It is going to come down to where you're going to face our Messiah, Yahushua Mashiach, face to face, and you have to give an account of your life. And a lot of people are going to use that Adamic excuse, that woman you gave me. They're going to blame somebody else. The pastor didn't teach it. We didn't understand it. He said something a long time ago, but he's not going to take those excuses. And I don't want anybody looking back at us and saying, well, he didn't teach us how to do it. The ones who don't teach you how to do it are those in Christianity. And I know I'm saying that some things that some people take offense to because they don't like for Christianity to be addressed. They don't like for it to be addressed. But Christianity does not teach you to keep the feast when it says right there in the Bible. And even Shaul said it in 1 Corinthians 5 and verse number 8. We'll read 7 and 8, but in verse 8 is what I'm looking for. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even the Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. So ever since our sacrifice was for us, he says, therefore let us keep the feast. There's no excuse unless you're in a teaching that tells you, oh, you don't have to do it. It's all that's done away with. All that, unless you're in something like that, then they're not being honest. And it could be that they don't know. It could be that they don't know. And sometimes we're really hard. We drop a hard line when it comes to Christianity and the faith of Christianity. But when he starts to wake you up and he's informing you and he's leading you into the light and the understanding, now it's upon you. You got to take accountability for that. You got to take accountability for that. And that's why I think that there's going to be many people that will not make it out of the wilderness. Won't make it out. You're not going to make it in the kingdom. He even says in Ezekiel, the 20th chapter, the prophet Ezekiel, the 20th chapter, he says, I'm going to bring them out of the land, but they will not enter into the kingdom, because when he brings them out in the land, then he is going to be pleading with you. So nobody can say that they have not been taught, not here, not why we're as long as the Most High is giving it to me, as long as the Most High is giving it to me. Good. I gotta hear myself though. Okay. So nobody can say that they haven't been taught, and that's what I want to take away is the excuses. I want to take away all the excuses, because a lot of people like to dwell in ignorance. They think ignorance is bliss, and when the Most High, when it says in the book of Acts, the 17th chapter, there was a time where he winked at ignorance. Some of us are going to want him to continue to wink at ignorance. They want him to wink at ignorance. He says, I'm not going to keep winking at ignorance. Once and we read in the scriptures the other day in the 10th chapter of Hebrews, when you've been enlightened and you've tasted of this, and then you turn from it, there is no repentance. There is no repentance. So all of us are going to be left without excuse. All right. So verse number 8, like I said here, therefore let us keep the feast. So what kind of feast are we keeping? We're coming off of the fast, which was a self-examination. Examine yourself, see if you're in the faith, see if you're really doing this right. You got to look at your own self, look at your, what areas do I need to work on? Or is there sin in my life that I need to overcome? Is there sin? Because he tells us, point blank, he tells us that sin is a transgression of the law. Point blank. You transgress his law, that's sin. It doesn't matter if it's a big sin, little sin. If you transgress his law, that is sin. And he goes on to say in 1 John, the 5th chapter, that all unrighteousness is sin. Everything that's not right is sin. So we do a examination of ourselves, and we look over ourselves. We see where there's areas that, hey, I haven't been doing right in this area. I don't want to keep doing that. I'm going to make that change. And you've got time to pray, to seek him, and to make that change, because when we take of his body and his blood, after our meal, we take of his body and his blood, then what is, I've taken the necessary steps. I've taken the necessary steps. And so there's a question about the unleavened bread. We're talking about Pesach, the Pesach meal. And then you have the body and the cup, which represents his blood of the new covenant, or some people say New Testament. In the book that I have upstairs, it is a Jewish rendering and a Jewish commentary of the New Testament. And it states in that book that in the original Greek text, it does not say new. It does say the didache, or the covenant, but it doesn't say new. And so a lot of times we think of, the Old Testament and the New Testament, but in the original context, or in the original writing, the text, I think it's the Codex, it doesn't have new, it just has the covenant. What makes this covenant different from the covenant that was given to Israel in Sinai, and we kind of talked about that. What makes this covenant different? And that is the blood of bulls and goats could never take away sin. The blood of bulls and goats did not deal with your consciousness. Whereas the blood of Yahusha, that's what was new. What was new was no longer the blood of animals. the sacrifice now is Yahushua Mashiach. He sacrificed. He gave his blood. He did it once for all. So when we take of that cup, what is new is when we drink that cup is this is the blood of the sacrifice, or this is the life of the Mashiach who was sacrificed for us. And so when it talks about the commandments of Yahuwah, when it talks about cleanliness, the being Kodesh of Yahuwah, when he talks about in the giving of the Torah or the law to Moses, and how if we live by that, we are a separate people, we are a Kodesh people, we are a set-apart people. All of that still remains. When he talks about keeping my feast, keeping my covenant, all that still remains. What is new, if you want to say it's new, or what is different, is the Mashiach is our Passover. The life and the blood that was shed by Yahushua Mashiach is what brings in the covenant. That's the difference. That's the newness. When he says in Hebrews that he did away with the old that he might establish the new, what was done away with the old is the blood of bulls and goats. The blood of bulls and goats. And what is new now is the blood of the Mashiach. That's what's new. But, you know, the Ten Commandments, does that mean the Ten Commandments is there? Ten Commandments still there. He hasn't done away with them. Just because Yahushua's life and the blood that he shed, and so now with that life and blood, like a lot of people would say, I'm under grace now. I can do whatever I want to do. I don't have to keep the commandments. I don't have to keep Torah. I just do the best I can. I'm under grace. If I sin, I sin. And I mean, that thought and that ideology does not come from Yahusha and the people that he gave it to when he told them to go out and give it to the world. That is a totally different ideology and the misapplication of grace. Because a lot of times we like to define grace as the unmerited favor, and when Noah found grace back in the 6th chapter of Genesis, verse 8, when he found grace, it wasn't unmerited favor. It was the in fact, one thing that was in his genes and his genes and stuff, he had not been contaminated. He was perfect in his generations, and that generation is dealing with his genealogy. He was perfect, and that's why he could use Noah and use his sons, because what came from Noah through his genetics down to his sons, that was where he was going to use that blood genetics through Noah to rebuild the earth, and also come through, the Messiah was going to come through that. But anyway, what Noah had to protect him was the laws that he had gave. Has anybody ever heard of the Noahide? Huh? Yeah. The Noahic laws. I think that's what they call Noahic laws. And that's what protected him. And so when the Most High Yah seen him and he kept his laws, he says, this is the one that I'm going to pick. I mean, Noah is the one that found grace in my eyes. So I think the Greek and the Roman definition, and we have to be careful when we use their definitions on Hebrew words and on a Hebrew culture. Because what the Greeks and the Romans have done is they brought in their culture and their beliefs and their pantheon of gods, and they brought that in, and then they're the ones that has carried Christianity to the world, which is they aborted it. But anyway, so we got Pesach coming up. We also have unleavened bread, and I want to talk a little bit about unleavened bread before we go into a little bit more about the Pesach. But in Exodus chapter 12 and verse number 14, Exodus 12 and verse number 14, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to Yahuwah throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. He's not leaving it up to foreigners. Notice who he gave this to. He gave this to the nation of Yasharal, or Israel. They like to say Israel. You know, he changed his name from Jacob to Israel, pronounced Yasharal. He gave it to that specific nation. He didn't give it to, there was other nations around at that time. I hope y'all know that. There was a lot of different nations. In fact, they came out of a nation. They came out of Egypt. That was a different nation. You had the Cushites. That's where Nimrod came from. He was a grandson, I think, of Cush. You had the Cushites, the Ethiopians. They were a nation. The Egyptians was a nation. The Libyans, they were a nation. The Canaanites, you had all these African nations. You had all these people that had already formed nations. He didn't choose any of them. He chose Yasharal. And so he gave it unto Yasharal, and it's Yasharal that has to take the Messiah to the world. That's who's supposed to take him to the world. He chose his disciples, and even Shaul, who came out of the tribe of Benjamin, was an Israelite. And so he chose these men to take this to the world. But Yahusha did say that the kingdom suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. And they came in and took it by force. They grabbed, they took it, changed some of the writings. But what was most effective was they took our book and put it in their culture and then brought it to the world. And that's why you see a lot of people in Christianity, and as soon as they say the law's done away with, you can tell they've been institutionalized by the Greeks and the Romans and their culture, and how they took the gospel or the good news or the Besorah or the Torah to the world, because they only want to, they don't want to deal with what was given to Yasharel. They say we got something new, not knowing that what was new was that the blood of our Messiah, the blood of our King. That's what's new. The blood of our King is new. He did away with the old. He did away with the old. When it says that in Hebrews, he did away old that he might establish the new. That old was dealing with the blood of bulls and goats, because it could never take away sin, and it couldn't deal with your conscience. So he said, that's the old. What I have now is the new, which is the blood of the King, the blood of Yahusha, because the blood of Yahusha does take away your sin. It does. Now, the new covenant, when people talk about the new covenant and everything like the new covenant is when he writes it on your mind and in your heart, which is another level of consciousness. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Y'all could barely, me too, can barely read the book. Let alone know all of how he would write it in our hearts and our minds to where we would know him. You know what kind of level, you know where you would be at? We have to be a new creature, because these minds wouldn't be able to handle it. We would be like what you would call gods. We're just gonna have a different level of consciousness and understanding of who Yahuwah is and all his creation and everything. Sometimes you look at the vastness of the sky and the star, how he painted all that up there, and you see how vast it is, and people say it's never ending. And he's got a name for every star. You look up there and see he's got a name for every single star. He knows all of that. We can't comprehend that, but once he writes everything in our hearts and our minds, we're going to be at a different level. But that new covenant hasn't come yet. It says here, ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. And that's why Shaul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, we read it right, therefore keep the feast. He plainly says it, therefore, because it is an ordinance forever. The death, burial, the resurrection of our Messiah, the infilling of the Ruach HaKodesh does not take away the ordinance. There's an order of doing things, and this is the order of us doing it. Verse 15, 7 days ye shall eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Yasharel. So we're going to look at in verse number 7, or verse number 15 here. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread from the first day. Whosoever, and put away leaven out of your houses. And so let's look up some of these words, and I think that's a good thing whenever you're doing your study or you're trying to get an understanding of certain things. It's good to look up the word. So in verse number 15 here, we're going to look up the word when he says, ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. Leaven, that is H7603. So we'll just tap on that as D and C. D and C, when you see D and C, and this is the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, but when you see these letters here, you have to use it in its context. You want to know what is the context of how he's using this leaven, because you'll find out that certain words, it's the same word. They'll use it on many different occasions. You just have to find out what it means in that context when you're reading it in that context. And so it tells you right here, D and C. So I'll go down to D and then to C. Now D gives you the root in its context. The root in its context is need. Need, not your two knees, but need. Which what do you associate need with? What is need or needing? What is that? You're dealing with bread. Right? That's what we're dealing with here. So you have to look at it in the context. He's talking about need, bread, the twisting and turning of the bread. Okay? And then we have to go down to C, right? So in the context, what he's talking about is the kneading of bread. So we all have to eat unleavened bread. You know, and some of you might have started making unleavened bread already. I don't know, but you know, making your unleavened bread, and I think over the years we're starting to get really pretty good at this. You know, and it doesn't have to be the unleavened bread doesn't have to look like the matzah you get out of these boxes in the stores, and you don't know how old it is. But well, I think they do put a date on it. I think they put a date on it. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be like that. You can make your own bread. And just as long as it doesn't have leaven or yeast or baking soda or baking powder. I mean, those are type of things that you're not going to want to use as you make your unleavened bread. So we're talking about unleavened bread here. Going down to C, it means leaven. And then leaven, and looking up what leaven is. Leaven, today we would call yeast. What we would call today is yeast. You know, some other things that they might use for bread, because we're dealing with bread. We're not dealing with, you know, a whole lot of other stuff. You know, your drink, you know, what you're drinking, but we're dealing with bread. We're dealing with bread. So the leavening or the leaven or the yeast or baking powder, baking soda, things like that, where there's yeast in it, because you're supposed to make your bread. And if you don't get the leaven out, you would probably put leaven in your bread, even if it's by habit. See, nowadays, a lot of our food, it's already made for us. A lot of stuff's already made for us, and so we just go and purchase it. And a lot of times we don't even know what's in our food, and they're getting very, very clever. They're very cynical, because they put a lot of these people who are in power knows y'all ain't supposed to have swine. They know it. They know it. So what they do is they try to put it in everything. I used to like eating pudding. Didn't I say it right? People looking at me, what, did I say it right? Pudding? Oh, okay. Folks, look at me. What is he talking about? Yeah, pudding, until I found out that what they put in pudding is pork enzymes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so I haven't really been digging that deep because once I found that out, I just stopped eating it. But yeah, I guess you can, and it's good to read the labels. Do your research and read the labels. It's good to do that because then you know what is actually in the food that you're eating, because we do have a restricted diet. And you know, all this talk about, Paul didn't say that and all. Paul said, as concerning the law, he was what? He was blameless. Kepha, when that was given that vision, he told Yahusha, "Oh well, hey, I ain't eating that. I ain't never had that." He said, "No, Adonai." I mean, how many of us would tell the Adonai no? But so when he went to Cornelius' house, then the revelation hit him. Oh, he's talking about Gentiles. If I clean up Gentiles, I can't call Gentiles unclean. And that's what that vision was for. It's not to make a dietary doctrine, which the Christian church does. They make that a dietary doctrine, and that's not what he was dealing with. He had to because that vision in the 10th chapter of Acts, this is like 6 years after the resurrection of our Messiah. 6 years. And Kepha still didn't. He said, I gave you the keys. You're supposed to go open this, unlock this. And Kepha said, I don't have anything to do with heathens or Gentiles. I ain't got nothing to do with them. He said, it's not even lawful for us to eat with them. That's what now, when we go through Pesach and unleavened bread, you could eat with any Gentiles that came into Yasharel and did like Ruth, your El is my El and your people are my people, then they were a part of Yasharel, then they could keep the feast and everything like that, sit down and eat with them. But if they didn't want to have anything to do with your El, your deity, or your covenant, they don't have anything to do with it, then you got no part of this. You have no part of it. That's even today. And you got a lot of people today, I don't have nothing to do with it. I don't have nothing to do with them people. Well, you're not a part of this then. You're just not a part of it. So we have to be careful because it was prophesied. Now, I want to go to Ezekiel. We're going to come back here, but Ezekiel chapter 4, verse number 12, 13. And this is kind of, if you read the 4th chapter here, I don't want to read this 4th chapter because you guys are coming off your fast, eating your meal. You might stop eating your meal and then not want to finish your meal if you read this whole chapter. So I'm not going to read this whole chapter, but in verse number 13, Ezekiel 4:13, and Yahuwah said, even thus shall the children of Yasharel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will what? When I drive them out, and this was a prophecy because he hadn't driven them out at this time with Ezekiel, but he says, when I drive them out and they're going to go amongst them Gentiles, they're going to eat defiled bread. Because Gentiles eat defiled food. Yasharel was not supposed to eat that kind of food, but when he drove them out and got out of the land, out of Jerusalem, out of the promise, y'all have to get out, all of y'all, because it says that in Jeremiah, the 13th chapter, they all had to get out. So he says, when y'all do go out amongst some Gentiles, y'all going to eat your defiled food. Because them Gentiles, y'all know when we get hungry, even at one time, Israel got so hungry, what did they do? They ate their children. They got that hungry, they ate their children. So he says, when I drive y'all out to these Gentiles, oh, y'all going to eat some defiled food amongst some Gentiles. I know y'all. Y'all know how it is when y'all get hungry. Hey, no, man, I'm going to eat something to eat now. I'm going to eat. You see something crawling around. You go hunt. You don't care if it's a coon, a rabbit. You don't care. You ain't looking at the hoof, the claws or hoofs. You ain't checking if it's a rodent or something. You hungry. Y'all know how we don't see too many stray cats and dogs around here? You don't see too many of them around here in this area. They get snatched up, you know. But so he knew. So he said, when y'all go amongst some Gentiles, y'all gonna eat some defiled bread. And we're amongst the Gentiles. Yasharel is amongst the Gentiles. That's why it's important to read the labels and to find out things, because when they say enzymes, unless they specify beef enzymes or something like that, if it just says enzymes, it's pork. It's pork. And they'll put that in all kind of food. You be looking at, oh my goodness. Yeah, and we get our cheese from there's a Fairways One, and then Jewel Osco over in Moline, where you can get cheese that doesn't have pork enzymes in it, but you have to look at it and read the label. My wife, she did her research, she found it, and we get the cheese that doesn't have the pork enzymes in it, because they'll put pork enzymes on. I mean, you have to be careful of your chips. We used to eat a lot of different. Then we had to start looking at the chips. Oh my goodness, they sprinkling this on the chips and stuff. So just have to be careful, and it'll be good if you grow a lot of your own food. That'll be good. And we're getting ready to plant the garden, right? We're getting ready to plant the garden. Can't wait to plant it. But the other day, it still got down to 32 degrees. One day it got down to 29. It was still too cold. You know, it was freezing out there. But we want to plant our garden. So where we Exodus 12, and because I want y'all, if you got any questions, go ahead and I was at verse 15. Verse 16, and in the first day there shall be a holy convocation. In the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. Y'all know what that's saying, right? Okay, the first day and the seventh day is to be a holy convocation. We're supposed to come together. We are going to come together on the first day. Now the seventh day is going to be the 19th, which is the Shabbat. Will be here, so we'll have our Shabbat service. We'll have our last meal of unleavened bread. But you can't eat anything leavened until evening on the 19th. Not until the evening on the 19th are you allowed to eat anything with leaven in it. So we'll have our feast. It's a holy convocation. What does convocation mean? Well, let's look it up. It's H4744. EH, it's a meeting, event. Let's look at the context, E and H. So I'm going to go down here to E, because you can use the same word to mean different things. So you got to look at it in its context. E is to call, meeting, a calling together for assembly. That's what a convocation is, calling together for assembly. And what did I say? E what? It was EH. Okay? Meeting, a calling together to meet. Also, reading. When you're called together for a meeting, there's a reading. The reading from a scroll at a called meeting. It's a convocation, assembly, calling, reading. So when we come together, we have our holy convocation. We have it on the Pesach. We're going to do that. We'll be up in Indianapolis. That's going to be on the 13th. On the unleavened bread, the 14th, we're going to do that as well. And then on the 19th, we'll be here and we'll do unleavened bread, the seventh day of unleavened bread, right? Okay. No manner of work shall be done in them. Now, remember that, look at that holy convocation. We just read the definition of a convocation, right? right? Okay. So let's go to Leviticus. I'm gonna come back here, but let's go to Leviticus just to drive something home here, just to drive something home. All right. Um, Verse number 2, speak unto the children of Yasharel, and say unto them concerning the feasts of Yahuwah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy, what? Convocations. These are my feasts. So he starts to announce them. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day, Shabbat of rest. And then he calls it a what? A holy convocation. And we just looked at that, right? We just looked at that definition. It's a called meeting, and then what's supposed to be done? The reading of the scrolls or the Torah, the instruction. So every seventh day, every Shabbat day, there should be a gathering and a reading of his word. Every Shabbat day. And ye shall do no work. It is the Sabbath of Yahuwah in all your dwellings, no matter where you're at. Right? So the Sabbath is a holy convocation. All right? Which means you're supposed to meet on the Shabbat. Now, let's go to Exodus 31 and verse number, let's start with verse number 13. Exodus 31:13. Just keep in mind, it's a holy convocation, which is a called meeting to be reading the scrolls, reading the Torah, reading the law, reading the prophets. All right, that's what a holy convocation is. And every seventh day, every Shabbat is a holy convocation. Now he's going to put a little bit more emphasis. Speak thou also unto the children of Yasharel, saying, verily my Shabbats ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahuwah that sanctify you. So it is a sign upon Yasharel and the Most High Yah. And remember, holy convocation. And ye shall keep the Shabbat, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is a Sabbath of rest, holy to his people. Is that what it says? Holy to who? Yahuwah. It's holy to him. It's holy to the Most High Yah. A day that is Kodesh or set apart. It's holy unto him. Now, unto people, especially Christians, it ain't holy. You can do whatever you want to do. Hey, you can do whatever you want to do, man. Just take Sunday off. Saturday, rock out. Sunday, tell your employer, don't go to work. Somewhere somebody got the communications mixed up. And that's what happens when another nation, heathen Gentile, that has a different culture than Yasharel, when they take our book and then they define it and take it to the world, that's when you get that disconnect. That's when you get that disconnect, because the Most High Yah. And remember what Yahusha say. Don't ever forget this. In the 5th chapter of Matthew, Matif Yahusha says, he that well, let's get it right, because I don't want to misquote it. We'll come back. Remember, I had to go back to Exodus 31, then Exodus 12. Okay, Matthew 5. No, Matthew 5 and verse number 19. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, and not only do they break it, they do what? They teach men to break it. Uh-oh. So not only do they break it, but they teach men to break it. He shall be called the least in the kingdom of the Shamaim. And after we get through Pesach and unleavened bread, we're going to look at, what was that question I asked y'all the other day? Yeah, kingdom of heaven and kingdom of God. Why is it not in the Old Testament? And so we're going to look. We're going to look at. That's how he says it, right? Because man was. Well, we'll look at it, but man was not made. Y'all know y'all wasn't made to die now. So the only way you're going to pass from death to life, because that's how you. Okay, well we'll talk about it, but. You know, you got the kingdom of heaven, you got the kingdom of God or the kingdom of Yah, and we'll look at those. But whosoever shall, so it says that they're going to be the least in the kingdom of the Shamaim. Least in the kingdom of the Shamaim, or the kingdom of heaven. All right. Divine truth. Every time we look at what Yahushua's teaching, and the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like this, and he is setting up divine truth. And if you are breaking commandments, you're not understanding divine truth. You're not understanding divine truth. The least, anybody that has students, and you have your knowledgeable students, and then you have your students that are kind of on the upper echelon. Man, they're getting it. They're running off. They're getting it. Then you've got, well, this one is, not picking. It's just there. You got the greater, and then the least. And so the way we look at it, because see, Abba Yah, and I was reading. I got to try to figure where I was reading that today, because Abba Yah said, I ain't gonna pity y'all. Y'all think I'm gonna pity these folks that's gonna die and perish? He said, I'm not gonna pity them, because they had a chance. They had a chance. So a lot of times we think of people, bishops, big names, presiders, over organizations, all these big names, and we think, oh man, they got so much. Man, just the way their words flow, a flowery vocabulary, they're able to speak and everything, and oh man, they're just the prince of teachers and preachers. He says, as far as Yahuwah is concerned, Yahusha says, if you break the least of these commandments and teach men so, you're at the bottom. You're at the bottom. Now, for us, we look at these men and we like to put them at the top. He says, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts, they're not your thoughts. As far as the heaven is from the earth, that's how high. And we don't know where the heavens end, but that's how high his thoughts are from our thoughts, and his ways from us. So when we like to put men up on pedestals and think that they're so grand and all this and that, if they're breaking commandments and teaching men to break commandments, they're least. Unless, of course, you don't believe Yahusha. Now, it could be a chance Yahusha was mistaken. No, he wasn't. No, Yahusha, because he was the mouth of Yahuwah. There's no way he was mistaken. So that, I just want us to, I think you should put Yah's word above everything. Because he said, my word is forever settled in the Shamaim. You can't negotiate this. It's non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. So back to Exodus 31, because I want to hear him finish up here. Exodus 31. And verse number 16. Wherefore the children of Yasharel shall keep the Shabbat, to observe the Shabbat throughout their generation. It is a perpetual covenant. Unless you get heathens and Gentile nations come tell you it's over with. Don't have to do it anymore. Don't have to do it anymore. We believe them. We fall for it. Hook, line, and sinker, we fall for it. And the reason why we fall for it is because that's the culture in which we live in. United States of America, this Western culture, That's what they believe. These children don't have a chance. They're born into it. They're born and raised believing this already. Before you can try to even get it them. That's why he said that parents need to be teaching their children at home. Y'all know they're going to do away with a lot of history, a lot of stuff. They're taking it out. There's some history. You teach it, going to defund it. Y'all ain't teaching that. But we should be teaching it already. There's things we should be teaching in our homes, because when we come to this feast, and it says in here, when your children ask you, why are we doing it? Boom, golden opportunity. Tell them the story. It's about Yasharel going into Egypt, a family, not a nation. There rose up a Pharaoh that knew not Joseph, put him into slavery. And just you got a chance to tell them all the story, and then how the Passover was to bring them out, And the Most High Yah don't want us to ever forget that. Yahushua Mashiach is our Passover, but we're not supposed to forget about that. We're never supposed to forget about what he's done. The day is coming where people are going to compare that Exodus to this one that's coming up. Oh, they're going to forget about that one. They're going to forget about that one. They're going to be talking about this one that's coming up. Because that Exodus, the nation came out of one nation. This Exodus, Yasharel's coming out of many nations. He's gathering them from the four corners. And it's going to be so grand on a grand scale that people are going to forget about Moses coming out of Egypt. They're going to be talking about this one that is about to happen. It's a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Yasharel forever, unless the Greeks and the Romans and the Christians tell you that it's done away with. Then that's when you start to believe, well, it's not forever. Why isn't it forever? Because the Christian teacher told me it's not forever. How? He's got to know what he's talking about. He's a bishop. He's a presider. He's the prince of teachers. Oh, man, you ought to hear him preach. Oh, he got some wisdom now. He's anointed. Because see, with the Most High Yah, he don't look at it like that. He looks at people breaking his commandments. Sin is a transgression of his law. But we like to look at, man, them folks are anointed. I don't know what you're talking about. Them folks are anointed. I don't care what Hazel say. Them folks are anointed. Until you start reading this book, I can't remember where I seen it, but I was reading it today because he says, I'm not going to pity them. When my judgment comes and I'm judging these folks, I'm not going to pity them. We will pity them because we got friends, we got loved ones, we got family. We pity them. Abba Yah, he ain't going to pity them. He said in the word, I ain't going to pity them. In Jeremiah, the 7th chapter, he says, I don't know why y'all keep praying for them. I'm done with them. That's in Jeremiah 7th chapter. And you know what he's dealing with there in Jeremiah the 7th chapter? Dealing with paganism. You read Jeremiah 7th chapter, he's dealing with paganism. He said these folks is kneading their dough and their bread to who? To the Queen of Heaven. That's paganism. And he said, y'all praying for them? He said, I'm done with them. He said those prayers aren't even reaching him. A lot of times we're praying for friends and relatives and folks that we know over there, and they practicing Christmas and Easter and all that, and we're praying for them. How do we know Yah said, I'm done with them? Or not really. How do we, because in Jeremiah the 7th chapter, it says, I'm not hearing that prayer. That's what he says. I'm not hearing that prayer. Was it Jeremiah 7, 7th chapter? It's about the 16th, 17th verse, somewhere around there. You'll see it. And if somebody gets it, maybe we'll call it. I can't recall it right now, but I know it's there. Okay, let's look at that. Jeremiah 7 and 16. And I was reading today, as I was reading through the Bible and reading today, I was reading somewhere I can't recall because I was all over the place. But it was talking about I'm not going to pity them. And it was dealing with judgment. Because you have to understand, Yah, that's why he's so righteous. He has to judge righteously. Yeah. No, that's not it. But yeah, that was good. Okay, therefore pray not for this people, neither lift up cry nor prayer for them, neither make intercession to me, for I will not hear thee. Uh-oh. Because some of us think we bigger than Yah. Well, I know more than Yah. Okay. All right. For me, it's almost, I'm petitioning Yah and I'm praying for people. Then it's like, Yah, who should I pray for? Who should I pray for? Because I want my prayers to be heard. I don't want to be sending up prayers and I'm not even listening to that. You praying for look at what he says. Okay, seest thou not what they do in the cities of Yehuda and in the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other Elohim, that they may provoke me to anger. Because that's one thing, yes. A 911 hang-up. Yeah, we're good. All right. Thank you, officer. They doing their job. Somebody called 911 from here. All right. But they're just doing their job. So a lot of times we have to understand that when people are in gross idolatry, unless Yah wakes them up, sometimes they just ain't coming out. They just ain't coming out. So back to Exodus. Yeah, that's in Jeremiah 2, Jeremiah 6, and verse 15 and 16. Were they ashamed when they had committed abomination? Nay, they were not at all ashamed, neither could they blush. Therefore they shall fall among them that fall at the time that I visit them. They shall be cast down, saith Yahuwah. Thus saith Yahuwah, stand ye in the ways and see and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. This is what Yahushua was talking about in the 11th chapter of Matthew when he says, come unto me, all ye labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Because a lot of people think as soon as you get saved and you're in Yahushua and saved and everything, you're at rest and you have to keep the Sabbath. He was talking about this. The good way, you walk there and you shall find rest for your souls in the old paths, in the old way. But they said, we will not walk therein. Also I set watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the trumpet. Because he tells them, lift up your voice at the trumpet, show my people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins. Hearken to the sound of the trumpet. But they said, we're not going to hearken. We're not going to do it. He can shout from the housetop, watchmen. He's shouting out loud, rising early. We ain't going to do it. You got people like that. That's just not going to, they're not going to do it. So, we just go on and even when we go through this examination and everything, and we know that there's people like that, I don't have no hatred in my heart for them. In fact, I don't want to see people perish. That's just not in me. I want them to come into the light and come into the truth. I do. Man, if it was up to me, especially everybody that I love, my kinfolk, I'd say all of them. But it's not up to me. It's not up to me. And it's a good thing because you know how we are. We're partial. We'll save. I don't like this one. I like this one. I don't like this one. So you ain't gonna save everybody. But we're not like Yah. Okay, and in the first day there shall be a holy convocation. Seventh day shall be a holy convocation to you. No matter of work shall be done, save that which a man must eat. That only shall be done of you. So the only work that you do on the first day of unleavened bread and the seventh day of unleavened bread. Now, what about the second through the sixth? The second through the sixth are just regular days. We're to feast and have unleavened bread. At every meal, you have unleavened bread. But as far as a holy convocation, it's the first day and the seventh day of unleavened bread. Yes. Yes. No, that's mandatory. That's what it says here. That's how I read it, right? Holy convocation. 10:25. 10:25. Yes. Yes. That's what he was talking about. Because he was talking to the Hebrews. And when did the Hebrews or the Israelites, when did they assemble? Well, he gave them the days that they're supposed to assemble. Once a week minimum. Every Shabbat day is a holy convocation. We read that in Leviticus 23. It's a holy convocation every week. Then you have the feast day. So in Hebrews 10:25, when he says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together as a matter of sin, as some is, and so much the more as you see the day approaching, he's talking about this. These are our assemble days. These are our assemble days. Now, a lot of people get this mixed up with, in the book of Acts, when after the resurrected Savior, our Savior was risen, and the outpouring of the Ruach HaKodesh, and then they went from house to house. And a lot of times people look at going from house to house every day. That's kind of like, I mean, we don't do that anymore. We're so, this culture, we're not, even, the neighborhood I grew up in, it was closer than where we're at now. I mean, we had families up and down the street. You could walk up and down the street, and a lot of families, fathers and mothers of these other families, they see your kid, they'll tell you what to do, what's right, and then go tell your parents. I mean, that's the kind of neighborhood we lived in. Now folks want to fight you and kill you and everything. Wait a minute, hold up, time out. You don't want me to help your kid? All right, well, I ain't getting in there. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just a neighbor. But see, that's the kind of neighborhood stuff where they would go from house to house, and they were in fellowship, and they was talking about it and everything. For us to think that we're going to go house to house today, that, we have places where we assemble. We're supposed to assemble on every Shabbat. Even when they were going from house to house every day, they still were in the synagogue on the Shabbat. They still did it. Even though they was going from house to house. Going from house to house did not replace the assembling of ourselves together, as the sum is. They were just closer knit in those kind of neighborhoods and stuff, than what we have now. Even now, we could go from house to house, but y'all know some of us, the way we live, y'all over here again. Give me a break. I seen you on the Shabbat. Here it is Monday, and we cooked out Sunday. And then Monday you're over here. Wait a minute now. But they would go from house to house, and they were sharing the good news, And I'm sure they was rejoicing. And y'all know how it was when you first got filled with the Ruach, and sometimes you go through those revivals and stuff. Oh man, you didn't want to leave the presence of the Mishpachah, of the saints. You didn't want to leave that presence. You just wanted to be with them all the time. And that's how it was. And they said, hey, it was documented. Hey, they're going from house to house, spreading this, doing all that. And that's kind of how it was, right? But that never did replace the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, right? And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for it is the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. Now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2, Shaul does say you need to keep the ordinance that I've taught you. He does say that, and I don't think he was teaching ordinances outside of what Torah was, because he even says in the 5th chapter, therefore keep the feast. He does say that. So if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse number 2, now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things and keep the ordinances as I delivered to you. Now some people say, well, how do you know what Shaul delivered unto them? Well, you have to go by his own testimony in the book of Acts, chapter 28, and verse number 23. And when they had appointed him a day, now this here in Acts 28:23, this is a time where he's in house arrest the last 2 years of his life, because the last 2 years of his life he was in house arrest, and then they cut his head off. And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him into his lodging, to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of Yahuwah, persuading them concerning Yahusha, both out of the law of Moshe and the prophets, from morning till evening. The only books that he had to teach from was the law of Moses and the prophets, which is called the Torah and Tanakh. That's what he taught out of. So when he says the ordinances that I delivered unto you, they didn't have the printing press back then. A lot of times when people heard the scrolls read, it was on the Shabbat when they opened up the scrolls and they read them, because everybody didn't have a scroll in their house. They didn't. You had to go listen to the teaching. How does that read again? Or you had to go to the judges, because they had judges set up, or you go to the Levites, they did the teaching, because they didn't have a printing press and everybody didn't have a scroll in their house. So Shaul had the Torah and Tanakh, and he says, these ordinances that I delivered to you, I want y'all to keep them now. And the only thing he had was the law of Moses and the prophets. This is the last couple of years of his life before he died. So I can't see him delivering ordinances that were outside of the law of Moses and the prophets. I can't see him delivering ordinances outside of that. Now, there was times in 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter, where he says, this is not Yahuwah, this is me. He does say that, that I'm going to give you this teaching now. That this ain't Yahuwah, but this is me. And even in the 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter, he tells us that we should keep the commandments. That's in 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter. So I don't know where, but I do know where, but I mean, just the teaching from Christianity that there's no commandments, you have to keep the commandments, you have to keep the law, that's erroneous teaching. I mean, it's just erroneous teaching. But we've been there. We've been there, we've done that, right? So unleavened bread, we kind of know what it is right now, right? The first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread. Now, the 14th day of the first month, the 14th day is what? Pesach. 14th day is Pesach. So, Pesach is the 14th day, so you eat unleavened bread on the 14th day, all the way to the 21st day, which is actually 8 days. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 8 days. So it's 8 days in a row we're eating unleavened bread. So you should be, I don't know, what's today? I don't know if you guys anybody started making unleavened bread yet. Well, what they used to make bread with, and if you look at what do you use to make bread with? Anybody make bread? Yeah, yeast, and that's what they're dealing with here. Yeah. So I would say yeast. I mean, you buy yeast and it flatly says yeast. You want to get that out of your house. Baking soda, baking powder. I would, they use that for baking and for you know, like leaven, and I would get that. Any what they're dealing with is because you have to make bread during that week and you have to eat unleavened bread. So whatever you're using to make that bread can't have any leaven in it. Hmm. Yeah, I don't, I don't drink soda, so yeah, yeah. So let- so here in verse 19, 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. And so why would they find leaven in their houses? Is because you use leaven to make bread. And so for 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your house. For whosoever eateth that which is leaven, if you eat food that has leaven in it, that's what he's dealing with here. So what would they use leaven for? It's for bread. I don't. Does people sprinkle yeast on like salt and put it on meat? Or I don't. I don't think so. Usually you use yeast and baking soda and baking powder. You use that in baking when you're baking stuff. And so if you're, I think there's like cakes. I mean, there's some stuff we get rid of, like if it's cake, anything that's going to cause it to rise, cake mix and stuff. We don't have that. We get rid of that. Uh, Cornbread mix, we get rid of that. I don't think we got any of that in our house, but cornbread mix, that's a good example. Cornbread, cake mix, things like that. Yeah, you want to get that out of your house, you know, because anything that you're using for baking that's going to cause it to rise, like yeast, then you want to, and it's like a leaven, then you want to get rid of that out of your house. That's what he says here. Whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Yasharel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. So everything that has leaven, baking soda, baking powder, yeast, cake mix, cornbread mix, all that kind of, you have to get that out. And on Friday, I'm trying to get a good time, but from maybe like 3 to 5 p.m. on Friday, I can be at the storage unit. And if you got anything that you want to just put it, because you have to get it out of your house. If you want to put it in a storage unit there, you can. Or you can just throw it. I'm just going to throw it out. You can do that too. But if you want to keep it, you can't keep it in your house. You want to get it out of your house, then we do have the storage unit that some people used last year. We opened it up. Some people used storage unit last year. So just go through your pantry, your cupboards. You can do that too. You can do that too. Suggestion, those who are listening, was to give it to the homeless shelter or give it to hungry. You don't want to throw it away. Give it to somebody. This is for Yasharel. This is not for Gentiles, other nations. He's not given other nations these commandments, ordinances. He's not. He gave it to Yasharel. So you got some people like that officer that walked in. He don't, he ain't a part of us. But hey, you want some yeast, man? Go on, give it to them, and that's okay because they're not a part of us. The only ones that are supposed to do this are those who are part of us, those who are in Yasharel. If you're a part of us, then you're supposed to do it. You keep the Passover, you keep unleavened bread. It is a commanded feast. We can go to different verses. Let's go to Deuteronomy 16, and let's see, 16. And even in these feasts, there should be some rejoicing. And verse 16, Deuteronomy 16, 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yahuwah thy Elohim in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread. It is a mandatory feast. Mandatory holy convocation. Mandatory. The feast of weeks, which is Shavuot. Shavuot. And in the feast of tabernacles. And they shall not appear before Yahuwah empty. So when we go to Indianapolis, you got to bring an offering. Think about your offering. We're going to bring our, because we can't appear before him empty. Got to have an offering, and so we're going to do that when we go to Indianapolis. But this is a mandatory feast, and he gave us the ordinances on how we're to keep the feast, and so. We have Pesach, we have our meal. After the meal, we take of the body and the blood of our Messiah. That's mandatory. Mandatory. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. For verse 23, for I have received of Yahusha that which also I delivered unto you, that Adonai Yahusha, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he brake and said, take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. And after the same manner also he took the cup, and when he had supped, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood. This is the covenant in my blood. What is new, again, is we're going from the blood of bulls and goats to the blood of our Messiah. That's the new part of it. In my blood, this do ye as oft as ye drink in remembrance of me. For as oft as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show Yahusha's death till he come. And we do this at Pesach every year. That's as often as we do it. Gentiles and heathens, who this book was not written to, would take this book and then do it every week, twice a month, once a month, Easter, Christmas, New Year's, or whenever they felt like it. And that's not how, if the Hebrew Israelites were allowed to teach the book, you would know that it was once a year that we would do this, because that's the only time he died. He died one time at Pesach. And so when we keep the Pesach and eat of his body and drink his blood, we recognize his death. Whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of Yahusha unworthily shall be guilty of the body and the blood of Yahusha. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread, drink of that cup. And that's what we've done. We fasted. We've gone through this self-examination, right? And anything, and y'all know how we used to sing that song, search me, Yah, search me, Yah. If you find anything that shouldn't be, take it out and strengthen me, except that. Because usually there's something you don't want to give up. He start pulling and start taking, so I didn't mean that. So you have to do your examination. There's some things that we should be able to overcome. And now I know Shaul says, be angry and sin not. But some of us, we should get to that place where, I'm just not going to get angry. I've been around here long enough to know. I know when I'm being pushed, I'm just not going to get angry. Not going to get angry. No, you need to show your emotions. I want to see all of them. Well, for me anyway, I'm just getting to the point where I don't, that energy to get angry, I'd rather have that energy and use it somewhere else instead of getting angry. And but there's a lot of things you can work on, and when you do your self-examination, and some of the things, I want to be able to walk close, to be closer to him, and have a more elevated walk. Not to the point where I'm so heavenly minded, I ain't no earthly good. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, I want to just know more about him, know more about his plan, know more about what's coming, the revelations, the way the nations are breaking down. We look at our nation now, and things are going pretty rapidly. Um, and so, I was listening to some people, and our president met with the prime minister of Israel a couple of days ago, and some of the things that they talked about, and I'm going, man, it would be foolish for him to put the United States of America military over there fighting for the Ashkenazis, who aren't even descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and spill all that blood over there. Because if you listen to what they were talking about and what they want to do to Iran, it's gonna be a bloody mess. And most of the people that's gonna shed their blood is gonna be American soldiers. I would have my sons, if I had sons and daughters, hey, y'all gotta get out of that. How many years you got in there? It's time to get out. Time to get out, because they're gonna have you spilling blood over there. That ain't gonna make no sense. But we're starting to see how these nations are turning against the United States. Revelation 17 has to be fulfilled. It has to be fulfilled. And we're just seeing a lot of stuff going on. So, in my pursuit, I want to know more. I want to be in the Ruach HaKodesh, and in the Spirit and the Ruach, and just in my mind, in my thought process, and how I process everything, how I understand Abba Yah and his Torah and everything, and just grow in that. But you don't want to be, like they say, so heavenly minded you're no earthly good. We still have work to do down here on earth. We still got a lot of work to do, working with our families, working with our family structure, working in the assembly here. Torah, I always say, Torah begins at home. That's where it starts. It starts at home. So going through that self-examination, I mean, I'm just talking about me, but everybody should have, if you're still struggling with some of the sins you were struggling with 20 years ago, something's wrong. 30 years ago, 40 years, you still dealing with some of the same stuff. You haven't matured. You haven't gone through that maturation. There's something wrong. It's like a child. I was talking to my grandson, and because I take him to school, and I said, well, let's change roles. Why don't you be grandpa, and I'll be you, and I'll go to your school, and I'll be in first grade. He kind of looked like, no. He said, you be too big. You be the biggest kid in there. It wouldn't look right. But if you've been around for 20-some years, 30 years, and you're still in first grade, even a little kid recognizes something's wrong. That don't look right. That don't look right, Grandpa. That don't look right. A little child understands that. How can we those who've been around 20 and 30 years, we should be maturing. We should be having, this maturation growth. I mean, that should be there for us. We should be knowing more, grasping more. It's easier for me to learn, to understand it, to move in it. Quit fighting it. Let it saturate your mind. Some things we produce the conflict when the conflict doesn't have to be there. Just doesn't have to be there. So your self-examination, because we don't want to do it unworthily, drink damnation to ourselves, not discerning his body. For this cause many are weak, sickly among you, and many sleep. Now, verse 31 says, for if we would judge ourselves, he's given you the opportunity to look at yourself and judge yourself. The problem is, many of us don't want to judge fairly because we love this flesh. There ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect. I wouldn't even say that. Oh, no, I got stuff I can work on. There ain't no way. I don't have to work on nothing. Oh, wow. I did a self-examination. I came out 110 plus. Okay. Because he says, if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. Mainly because when I look at myself and I see what's wrong, I fix it. so then I won't have to be judged. There's some sins we should be over that. I ain't gonna be I'm gonna be judged on that. I'm over that. You know, the devil might throw a curve, might throw something at you. Yeah, it has to be something new because what he's been coming with lately, I'm over that. Doesn't mean he won't hit you with something new, though, because he knows how to come at you. He's been studying man from the time of Adam, and I think even before that. Because I think Adam, and we can talk about this later, it's not part of this, but I think Adam was the one where his seed was going to come through. Doesn't mean he was the first human. Anyway, the reason why I say that, because there's just, you can't read Genesis, the first 5 chapters, and there's, you got to know when to take it literally and when to know that he's dealing with something on a higher level. He's dealing with something that I'm probably not picking it up right now. You know, there's just a few things, you know. When Cain went off to find a wife in the land of Nod, there was already people. They were not the sons of Adam. They were there. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff, and even when you read like Enoch and Jubilees, you know, you a lot of things are filled. There's the Bible gives you, the King James or whatever version, the Bible gives you kind of like the structure, the bone, the framework and everything, but then Jubilees, Jasher, Enoch, some of the starts to fill a lot of things in. You know, it starts to fill things in, and so I'm not restricted to 66 books, because there's and some of these people who are scholars who knows about the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's scrolls and stuff they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls they didn't what do you call that, make public. They didn't they didn't translate them. They didn't publish them. So they found a lot of scrolls. There's a lot of scrolls. They just didn't publish them. You know, they have them. Roman Catholic Church has them. In the catacombs, they got a lot of that stuff down there. And it ain't even theirs. It don't even belong to them. But a lot of them weren't published. So for us to think 66 books is all of it, I think there's more than that. Because when they came out with this, they came out with 80, 81. Then they said, oh, you don't need to know that. Take that out. Yeah. Yeah, John said that. Yeah, Yahukanah. He said there wouldn't be enough books. If we wrote about everything he said and did, there wouldn't be enough books. You know, there would be so many books and stuff. I mean, you'd be constantly Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Paul were not the only writers. There was more writers. I mean, there was more people walked with them, seen some witnessed some stuff, heard some things. They wrote. We don't get their publications. Yeah. So that's why I don't think 66 is all of it. You can learn more. All wisdom and knowledge comes from Abba Yah above. So when people are getting more knowledge and advancing in education and knowledge and wisdom and stuff, you know, Yah distributes that. He drops that. And he says, I reign on the just as well as the unjust. We know some people that's crooked, wicked, has 2 left feet, but they got a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. Yeah, he said, hey, I reign on the just as well as I do the unjust. Because I'm El Yah. I do as I please. He says, I raise my hand and say, I live forever. He said that in Jeremiah, I think. Yeah. I ain't a man. He said, I ain't a man that I should lie, nor the son of man, I got to repent. I ain't doing that. No. So judge yourself. I'm done. And anybody got any questions? We got any questions about unleavened bread? Leaven. Did we kind of get that cleared up about leaven going through the house? And, you know, anything you're using for baking, you know, when you bake cakes, cupcakes and cornbread and all that stuff, everything that, when you do that, and if it's rising, you got to get rid of it. Can't have it in your house. And we got to eat unleavened bread for a total of 8 days, unleavened bread with your meal. We will have a feast here. We're going to Annapolis for Pasach and first day, unleavened bread. But on the 19th, we're having the 7th day of unleavened bread right here, to where we'll have our feast. And we fasted, so you don't have to fast going through the feast. Because it does say in Deuteronomy, some other places, it says, ye shall, what? Ye shall eat, ye shall feast, ye shall rejoice. He says, ye shall rejoice. So, what'd you say? Be merry. It says you're supposed to rejoice. So we're going to be singing. We're going to be singing some praise songs. We're going to be rejoicing. And, leave all your sad stuff at home. Leave your sad stuff at home. You got a prune face, and it looks like your bottom lip is dragging on the ground. Leave that at home. Leave that at home. This is the time we come together. We rejoice. We sing. We're in the presence of the Mishpachah, and we're supposed to have a good time. So with that, we're going to say shalom unto you. We'll be back on the I don't know if we're going to go live this week. That's right, because we won't be here. So and this is a season for Passover and unleavened bread. And so we'll see y'all next Torah study. Next Torah study. Now, if we go live or something, I'll send out a message. Okay, if we go live. So, and yeah, look for Elder Gerard. He might put it up. All right. So, all of our cameras, equipment's here, and so we're not going to take them out of the house. So.